Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Sobek 2 Players from Pandasaurus Games. Sobek 2 Players is a new version of the game Sobek, which in my head, we'll get to the name in a second, but in my head I was like, why are they calling it Sobek 2 Players when the original Sobek was 2 players? Then I looked up the original Sobek, and the original Sobek was a 2 to 4 player game that I'm pretty sure I only ever played 2 players, which is not their fault, that's more of a my fault conversation. But past that, the name Sobek 2 Players is an interesting one. Imagine if we had 7 Wonders 2 players, and Splendor 2 players, and all of those. I think that it could have been perhaps a bit more creative, but Sobek 2 Players it is. Let's go ahead and dive into this 2-player version of Sobek that does have elements of the original, but also very much a different format and style to the way you go ahead and gather tiles in this game. And that's basically what you're doing in this game. In Sobek, you're going to be gathering sets of tiles and then completing sales. On your turn, you do one of 3 things. You either go ahead and gather a tile on the board. We'll talk more about how that works. We're going to be moving this Ankh around the board. Or you can use a character power, or you can sell a set of 3 or more goods. Those are the 3 things you can do, and if you're ever stuck, you can also refill the board, but we'll talk more about that, well, later. So to that end, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start off by one of the players taking a tile from the center. Maybe I sit there and say, you know what, there's a ton of wheat on the board. Maybe I really want that wheat over here. So I'm going to take the wheat, and I'm going to go ahead and put this into the center over here, putting this onto the board. This is now our Ankh that's going to be moving around the board as we go. The player's then going to go ahead and start taking those tiles, trying to figure out exactly with looking at the direction the Ankh is pointing, taking a variety of tiles. Now, so you could take this tile or this tile and you're fine. If you take this tile though, you're skipping over a tile and that's going to go into your corruption, where it's not really worth negative points per se, but it will give your opponent the opportunity to get more positive points based on how much corruption you have versus they have at the end of the game. If your corruptions are both in balance, there won't be that much of a difference, but the more corruption you have over your opponent, the more of a price you're going to pay for that. And again, by price you pay, I mean that they will benefit from that. So you can go ahead and move 101, or you can go to the next step and jump ahead and take more. In our case, we're going to go ahead and have this player jump here to take this tile, because that's a very good tile. We're just going to store some tiles over here. This will go away over here into their corruption. And it's worth noting over here, the players do not, right now over here, I'm just having them playing this all face up, but all the other things normally in the game are going to be face down. And also, the way you're going to orient the Ankh is because you took this tile and because it has these directional arrows, that's the way the Ankh orients, which means now it's back to me and I have a choice of what to take. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and take this tile over here because I don't want to take corruption. So I'm going to jump over here, take this tile, but this has a coin on it, which means you could either take this tile to sell it as a set of fish, but there's not a lot of fish on the board, so I don't want to do that. So instead I'm going to trade it in for a Devon token. I'm going to go ahead and reach into the pile, take a Devon token. I got a 4. These numbers go, I think as high as 7 if I recall correctly, but I think it's from 3 to 7. I'm going to go ahead and discard this over here, and I got a Devon tile, which is going to be worth those 4 points at the end of the game, although again my opponent doesn't see it. Now this tile over here is pointing with the arrows up and down, so we're going to go ahead and have the Ankh moving up and down now, and it's back to this player. They're going to grab this tile because this tile is very helpful because of the fact that it's wild. It can be sold as any set. It never comes with Scarabs in it. We haven't talked exactly why you want the Scarabs, but rest assured you do want the Scarabs because when you sell a set, you basically sell a set equal to the number of goods multiplied by the number of Scarabs you have on that good. That's going to be the set value. So for example, let's pretend this tile was not on the board. If we sold these 3 over here, this is a set of 3. That's going to be 3 times 6, which is a total of 18 points for the set if we sold it. But we can't. In fact, right now it's the other person's turn, which means they're going to go ahead and do their darndest to deny me this tile over here because it's both a good tile for them and prevents me getting a way too strong set of whites. We're going to orient it this way now because of that tile, and they can go ahead and take any of these tiles. This is where we start getting into characters. When you take a character, you get to go ahead and orient the Ankh in any direction, but you also get a character tile, and you can use this. It's actually a helpful character because it counts as wild as well, but you can use these characters either for their abilities or you can use it as part of a set of that color to go ahead and sell it. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and orient the, we don't want to orient it down this way because we want that one over there. We don't want to orient it this way because we want that one over there. So we're going to orient it this way, which gives our opponent no real choice. They're going to have to go ahead and take this tile. So there is some degree of agency over how you point things in ways that are going to limit your opponent. You can see over here, I'm not doing well at all. I have 3 disparate sets of goods, which just isn't helpful. On my end though, I'm kind of in the same boat, honestly. I could go ahead and skip over this to go ahead and get the leader, but I don't know if that's worth it. But then again, getting a bunch of cows aren't that worth it either. What are my options over here? Can I force my opponent into any option? I mean, honestly, if you go over here, you have a degree of force in them because of the corner piece over there. But I think I'm going to go ahead over there, taking a little bit more corruption, taking this tile, hoping for the best. Let's see what we got. We got that. That's going to go into our supply. And then we're going to go and orient it. And let's go ahead and orient it. You know what? We're going to orient it this way over here. From there, my opponent's going to go ahead and take a tile, and this is where I don't want to go back and forth for too long, so let's talk about a few other things. Let's go ahead and grab a tile off the board. Let's pretend we have another set over here. We can go ahead now in our turn. If we don't want to take a move and you have other options, you could take other options. So effectively, let's say the tile is currently pointing somewhere which is going to give us a bad option. The only place we can go is still going down. It's going to move the token to the right. The other player is going to get a tile they want. We want to break that flow of you go, I go, you go, I go, and that means you do have options in front of you. You have the option to utilize a character. You can use either of these characters for their abilities. Characters, again, can be utilized for their ability, which will give you a variety of perks, making your opponent discard tiles, letting you go ahead and get rid of, grab some extra tokens from these Nile tokens over here. Or alternatively, you can also use it to sell it as part of a set. You can say, you know what, this is part of this set, and therefore, we're going to go ahead and sell a set of 4 goods. We have the 2 alligators, the 2 bones. We only have 3 scarabs. That's still going to be 3 times 4, or 12 points for the set, and it's not even locked in yet. You can possibly expand a set later, but you have to expand sets at least 3 tiles at a time when you expand them, so if I get 1 more bones, that's not going to be helpful enough. So again, on your turn, you either move the Ankh around collecting tiles, or you use the character's power, or you sell a set of tokens in order to go ahead and get their points at the end of the game. You can make additional sales throughout the game to expand upon that set. You also have the ability to refill the board. When you can't move anything and you can't move the Ankh around the board, you have no option of taking a tile, you're stuck in a corner over here and the Ankh's pointing like this and you can't do anything, you could go ahead and refill the board. You're going to go ahead and follow the arrows around as you go through the process of refilling the board from the bag, and then you're going to go ahead and again grab a tile. I'm not going to do the whole thing right now. You're going to again grab the tile from the center, reset the Ankh, and you're going to keep having that ability to refill the board up until the point where there are no tiles left in this bag, which is going to go ahead and trigger endgame the next time the Ankh becomes stuck. So effectively, whenever the Ankh becomes stuck, you refill the board, and if the Ankh is stuck and there's no tiles left in the bag, that will trigger game end once players have taken any other remaining abilities, including activating characters or alternatively selling sets of goods. And that's basically how you play Sobek. The expansion, which we are talking about today, and the endgame. I'm sorry, I left out a very important part. When you sell a set of goods, you're going to go ahead and reveal these Nile tiles. These tiles over here have certain abilities in them, and whenever you sell a set of goods, you have to take one of these tiles. There are different things from, you have this coin that's straight up worth 7 points. You have this tile that can go on a spot, forcing an opponent to take a specific tile and move into an action. You have these that count against your opponent's corruptions. You have different abilities, and we have a whole stack of additional tiles over here that we're not using right now. All these tiles giving you something else as far as these different Nile tiles, but you only get to see them the first time you sell a set of goods, and only you get to see them until your opponent sells, and then he gets to see them as well, at which point you can then go ahead and flip them face up. And so when you sell a set of goods, you'll both be able to sell a set, but also take one of those Nile tiles, getting the reward or benefit of it, and knowing what other tiles are there in order to try to figure out how fast you want to hold out for a larger set, versus how fast you want to sell something quicker in order to be able to get the right tile that will help you out. Past that, as far as endgame scoring, in the end of the game, you're going to be scoring for these sets of tiles based on the scarabs multiplied by the number of sets for each set that you have. You're also going to score points for your various Devon tokens over here. These tokens you're going to get throughout the course of the game, both for whenever you take a tile that has a token and you give up the tile in order to keep that Devon token, but also at the end of the game, whoever has more corruption is going to get, whoever has less corruption is going to get a Devon token, as well as for every 3 difference in corruption, you're also going to get a Devon token, which means you can end up, if you take too much corruption, if you have 12 corruption to my 4, you're going to end up with a bunch of Devon tokens, which could be a giant swing in points, because these tokens range from anywhere between 3 and 7. Again, I think it's between 3 and 7. We have 3s, we have 6s. Yeah, 3 and 7 is what the values are. 3 and 8, there's a single 8 over there. There's going to be a large degree of potential point swings for those Devon tokens as you play through the game. And that is how you play Sobek 2 players. The Temperatures of the Pharaoh's expansion has a few small things added in. Nothing crazy. We have a few 2 new character tiles effectively over here. We have, let's see if we can show these over here. We have 2 new characters if they are somewhere in the stack. You're also going to have these new tiles over here. These tiles are fun. They go face down. They have scarabs on them and 2 different goods, but they go face down the board, so you don't know what's there. You just know that it's going to be a tile that's going to have at least 2 scarabs, or only 2 scarabs, and you can go ahead and sell it for 2 different goods, meaning this tile over here can be part of a set of either the bones or a part of the set of wheat. It's going to be one or the other when you sell it, and it is going to contribute to, that's going to be 4 times 3 over there, or 12 points for that sale. The problem is, knowing how good they possibly are, there's 2 downsides to them. The first thing, you don't know exactly what's on the other side, so it may not be helpful for your particular set, and the second is it means this symbol over here means you're going to be taking one of these shuffled up face down corruption things, which count against your corruption, and its numbers ranging from 1 to 6, and that's going to give give you that much corruption, so you need to factor in whether you actually care about that enough as you take these various tiles in the game. So basically, that's what the expansion is going to add. It's going to add this new little tile type that gets shuffled onto the board face down, also extending the game. Inherently, it extends the game because that means you have 6 more tiles in play. It has a new corruption element attached to it, and then it has, a few new of these Nile tokens, and that space, and then the 2 new characters as well is what you have in the expansion. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review of this, starting off with ease of play. Rulebook is fairly straightforward. The game is very easy to get through, up and running. It's basically about moving this Ankh around the board, collecting tiles. It's 3 core actions. It's an end game trigger. It's a game that you can get people up and running in 5-10 minutes tops, and it plays in around 30 minutes for a quick moving game. Could go a little longer if you're taking your time with it, but you can knock out a game in 30 minutes pretty consistently. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking this game, first of all is the ability to give yourself alternative actions. This game is all about the flow of the Ankh around the board. You're trying to move the Ankh, trying to predict, okay, well, if I put this Ankh here, well, then now that person's taking one of these 2 tiles. If they take this tile, well, then this tile is just going to go right back to this tile, so I'll get this tile. If they take this tile, they're stuck in the board and they have to reset to the middle. So this is actually a good spot to go. So let's go ahead and end ourselves up over there. And now they can skip that, giving themselves corruption, or just take this and then I'll go there, and they'll get that. So they're going to go here now, which is fine, but I can work with that because even though they went here and I took that now, at the end of the day, I can go ahead and now I can do a sale, and they can't do a sale, which means anyways, they're going to have to still respond there. Those alternative actions, because the game is so much about the flow of the Ankh moving and how you gather tiles and how your opponent gathers tiles. It's a 2-player game. Anything that's bad for your opponent is good for you, and so that trade-off is very important as you try to gather things. And those alternative actions of using characters, of using a sale, those are things that let you control the flow. Characters are not just there for how good or bad an ability is, and some abilities are better or worse than others. But characters are also there for the fact that you can use them to break up the flow, to control who moves the Ankh where at any given point. Early game, the board is going to be completely chaotic, too much stuff. Granted, to move over too much stuff, take corruption, but there's just so much directional options in front of you that it's hard to accurately predict what the options are. But as the board starts to narrow down, you're going to see that there's going to be more options where you're like, they're going to be stuck. There's not a lot of options, or not good options for them if the Ankh is on that tile, and that's a big part of the game, trying to figure out how to position the Ankh as you go. There's going to be leader abilities and then the Nile abilities. There's going to be different abilities and things that do add to the variability of the game as you gather different leader tokens, not knowing what they are, hoping for the best, hoping they fit into your set or give you a good ability, or again, that you could just use them at the right time to break up that flow, to give you control over the board, plus the fact that when you take a leader ability, you get to point the Ankh in direction, which again, gives you control over the board. And so you just have different things you're trying to go for as you go through the game that give you just enough stuff to break up this fairly directional Ankh placement puzzle that lets you have a little bit more control over that as you go. The game is fast and easy to table, which is a good thing. There's a decent strategic trade-off to passing over tiles to get that right tile. Jumping over 1 or 2 corruption in order to get a tile that works for your set, that's a little bit of a math game as you try to figure out how much is that going to hurt you with the extra corruption you are taking versus how much is getting that right tile for your set worth that extra corruptional flow. And so that's another degree of trade-off as you go through the game. As far as what I don't like in the game, not a ton overall, but I'd say that I like to a large extent the directional trade-off and sequencing and breaking up of the movement on the board. That is the main source and flow of the game. But I find that that's only really relevant in the second half. The first half, like I touched upon already, it just feels too chaotic. There's too much happening on the board, and there's too much opportunities in front of you to be able to do something that isn't necessarily helpful in different ways, and so it's hard to really see those patterns early on. And so not just see the patterns, there's too many options on the table. You can't control the flow of what's going to happen next when you have a full board, and so that a little bit of control that is present in the game tends to happen more in the second half of each round as the board is slowly dwindling, but not in the first half, and not when you refill the bag again. There's just too many options in front of you, so it feels like that there's a degree of predictive movement in this game, and also a large degree of chaos that it's like, okay, I'll plan 2 moves out, and then from there the chaos will take over. You can't plan 3 or 4 turns in advance. There's just too many options, and so that's a good thing or a bad thing, because on the one hand it means you can't perfectly plan things, on the other hand it means that the degree of strategy and decision making is more limited in the game as you go through it. It's a bit too chaotic to plan and strategize in this for the lighter game that it is. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, a big one is going to be the randomness of these Devon tiles. To me, the game weight is low enough that this doesn't bother me, but I completely understand anyone who's bothered by the fact that you could randomly draw a 3-point tile or randomly draw an 8-point tile. That is a big swing in points. For a game that's like a tactical strategic puzzler to have such a huge degree of chance in it, again, for me, it's like, whatever, because this is a lighter game experience to begin with. This is not a cutthroat strategy game where I'm optimizing every move. This is more of a, I'll gather tiles and I'll sell them and I'll see if I can do them better than you. But the fact that you have such a huge swing in points for this game is is something that might definitely bother you. It can be the difference between winning or losing, and if you get a handful of Debin tokens. The flip side of that is it does force you to evaluate that trade-off of corruption, because sure, if your opponent gets 3 corruption, gets 3 Debin tiles because of the corruption you have, that could be only 9 points, or it could be like 24 points. So there's definitely a trade-off. It can't be 24. It could be 8 plus 7 plus 7, or 22 points. It could be 22 points is the maximum you could have, I think, as far as those tiles go, in 3 tiles. But as far as final thoughts, and secondly, some of the abilities are mean. Some of the things you do in this game are mean, as far as forcing your player to go certain ways, discarding their hand of tiles, giving extra things to their corruption. So if you don't like any degree of take that, there is a small degree of take that in Sobek 2 players. As far as final thoughts on the game, Sobek 2 players is fun. I haven't played the original one in a long time, to the point that I don't remember the core way the game played. I remember that has some degree of similarity of collecting various sets of goods, making sales, all those, but that's kind of where I tap out on remembering how that game played. But Sobek 2 players is a fun, fast-paced, enjoyable game that is on the lighter side as far as how much depth of strategy there is. You're moving Ankhs around the board, you're engaging in tiles. This is one of those games that is good and fun, but also that's about it. It doesn't stand out for me. It doesn't do anything amazing or incredible. It's just, it's got good graphic design, it's got good components, it has satisfying gameplay. It checks all the boxes in a way that is just a overall good game without being something that I'm particularly excited about or particularly raving about. If you're looking for a good game, this is a good game. If you're looking for something that I'm excited about, this is not that game. This is a 3.5 out of 5. I've enjoyed it. The expansion does add another little extra twist. I think that the expansion, honestly, if you have the expansion, I'd add it in from the get-go. The degree of simplicity it adds and that extra degree of trade-off of one more decision point is a nice thing. It's not too complicated. It's easy to implement. So I do highly recommend the expansion if you are playing and enjoying this game. But yeah, overall it's a 3.5 out of 5. I like it, I enjoy it, and I don't find myself particularly excited about it either. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Jaipur. If you're looking for a game that feels very similar in the current arc of the game, Jaipur is an older game. I don't know if it's even available. It might be out of print and all that, but it's a very similar game system that has you just collecting sets of goods in order to make a sale. I think it's a little more direct. It's a very similar system. If you like one, you'll probably like the other. You might have a question of do you need both of them, but I highly recommend Jaipur. And then if you're looking for a game that feels very similar in terms of the collection aspect of the board and gathering tiles, Splendor Duel is a 2-player version of Splendor that has that similar kind of board state as far as gathering just tokens of the board, refilling the board, and trying to make sets or sales of things. Not really sales in that sense so much as buying new cards, but similar aspects to the gameplay while being very different games. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.